Hi, I'm Carlos. You know when life seems to be going well and out of nowhere everything falls apart? That's how our story began. But before I tell you what happened, let me tell you a bit about us. My wife Mariana, our little daughter Sofia and I lived in a small town called Maple Grove in rural Canada. It was a small place, one of those where everybody knows each other, you know. We had a simple but cozy little house with a yard full of trees. In the summer, Sofia loved to play outside, climbing trees and making little houses for her dolls. I worked at the town's furniture factory. I've always been good with my hands, you know. I made some beautiful furniture. Mariana taught music at the local school. Piano was her passion, and she loved seeing the children's eyes light up when they managed to play a song for the first time. Sofia was our joy, a 9-year-old little girl full of life and curiosity. She had her mother's smile and my green eyes. She was always asking questions about everything, wanting to understand how the world worked. Mum, why is the sky blue? Dad, how do birds know where to fly? It was delightful to see that little mind working. Our life was simple, but we were happy. On weekends, we'd have picnics in the town park or go fishing at the nearby lake. Sofia loved these family adventures. She always came home with her pockets full of colorful pebbles or interesting leaves she'd found. But then, on an ordinary autumn day, everything turned upside down. It was a Tuesday, I remember it like it was yesterday. Sofia had gone to school as usual in the morning. Mariana was teaching when she got a call from the principal. Sofia had fallen ill. She had a stomachache. At first I thought it wasn't a big deal. Kids always have these things, right? We went to pick her up from school and took her home. Mariana made her some chamomile tea, and I put her to bed to rest. But night came, and the pain didn't go away. Sofia was crying, saying she'd never felt pain like this before. That's when the panic started to set in. Have you ever felt that pit in your stomach, that feeling that something is very wrong? That's exactly how I felt that night. We decided to take her to the town hospital. It was a small place, but it had always served us well. While I was driving, Mariana held Sofia in the back seat. She was moaning in pain, and I felt so helpless. You know when you'd give anything to be able to take away your child's pain? When we got there, we were seen by Dr. Thompson, a grey-haired gentleman who had known us for years. He examined Sofia, asked a few questions, and said it was probably just a bad case of indigestion. He prescribed some medicine and sent us home. But something inside me said it wasn't just that. Mariana was worried too. You know how mothers are, right? They have a sixth sense for these things, and as the days went by, this feeling only got stronger. Sofia wasn't getting better. The medicine didn't seem to have any effect. She barely ate, spent most of her time lying down, with no energy for anything. Our cheerful, lively girl had turned into a shadow of herself. We went back to the hospital several times. Each time a different diagnosis. A virus, food intolerance, they even mentioned stress, but nothing explained why our daughter was wasting away before our eyes. That's when we decided we needed to do something more. We couldn't just keep waiting in a small town where resources were limited. We needed answers, and we needed them fast. Want to know what we did? How our desperate search for help led us on a journey that would change our lives forever. We decided to take Sofia to Calgary, the nearest big city. It was a tough decision, you know. It meant leaving our jobs, our home, everything behind. But for Sofia, we'd do anything. I took a leave from work, and Mariana quit her music teaching job. We pooled all our savings and rented a small apartment near the Children's Hospital in Calgary. It was a cramped place, very different from our little house in Maple Grove. But we didn't care about that. The important thing was to be close to the doctors who could help our daughter. The first days in Calgary were crazy. We ran from one doctor to another, did test after test. Poor Sofia was already tired of being poked and prodded. There was a time when she looked at me, those green eyes full of tears, and said, "Daddy, I just want to go home." My heart nearly broke right there. After a week of tests, we finally got a diagnosis. Dr. Patel, a pediatric gastroenterologist, called us into his office. I remember it was a grey day outside, matching our mood. When he started talking, using a bunch of medical terms, I could only think, please, let it be something treatable. The diagnosis was frightening. Sofia had a rare condition called chronic intussusception. In simple terms, part of her intestine was folding into another part, causing a blockage. Dr. Patel explained that it was a serious condition and that Sofia would need urgent surgery. That night in our cramped little apartment, Mariana and I cried together after Sofia fell asleep. We were scared, really scared. What if the surgery didn't work? What if we lost our little girl? The day of the surgery arrived. It was a Tuesday morning, cold and cloudy. We woke up early, but truth be told, we had barely slept. Sofia was quiet. You could see she was scared too. Before going to the operating room, she hugged me tight and said, "Daddy, I love you." It felt like my heart was being torn apart. The hours that followed were the longest of my life. We sat in that cold waiting room, drinking one coffee after another, praying, begging for a miracle. Mariana was holding my hand so tight it hurt, but I didn't care. That grip was the only thing keeping me grounded. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Dr. Patel appeared. His expression, my God, I'll never forget it. He looked tired, worried. When he started speaking, my world fell apart. The surgery had been complicated. They managed to correct the obstruction, but during the procedure, Sofia had a cardiac arrest. They were able to resuscitate her, but she had fallen into a coma. At that moment, I felt like the ground had disappeared from under my feet. Mariana hugged me tight, and we cried right there in the middle of that hospital corridor. It was as if all our worst nightmares had become reality all at once. The days that followed were a blur. We took turns in the ICU room, holding Sofia's little hand, talking to her, begging her to come back to us. The doctors talked about wait and see, but you could tell from their eyes that things weren't good at all. 1 week passed, then 2. Sofia remained motionless in that hospital bed, connected to a bunch of machines. We tried to keep hope alive, but each passing day made it harder. It was on a night almost 3 weeks after the surgery that something happened that no one expected. I was sitting by Sofia's bed, as I always did. Mariana had gone to the apartment to take a quick shower. Suddenly, I felt a movement. I looked at Sofia and, my God, her little eyes were moving. I called the nurses, yelling like a madman. The doctors came running. Sofia was waking up. But then something happened that no one could have predicted. When she opened her eyes, she started saying things that a 9-year-old child shouldn't know. Want to know what Sofia said when she woke up? How this experience changed not only her life but all of ours. When Sofia opened her eyes, the first thing she said was, "Daddy, I saw Grandma Maria." I was paralyzed. Grandma Maria, Mariana's mother, had passed away before Sofia was born. We had never shown Sofia any pictures of her. The doctors gathered around, checking her vital signs, asking questions. But Sofia seemed to be in another world. She started describing a place full of light, with colors she said she had never seen before. She talked about people she had met, some of whom we recognized as relatives who had passed away. Dr. Patel tried to calm the situation, saying it was normal for patients to have hallucinations when waking up from a coma. But something told me it was more than that. Sofia spoke with a clarity and conviction that I had never seen in her before. She told us that during the time she was asleep, she had visited what she called paradise. She described angels, an indescribable peace, and said she had talked with God. For a 9-year-old girl who was never very religious, this was surprising. But the most incredible was yet to come. Sofia started talking about things about our family, secrets that we had never told her. She knew about the little brother I had lost before she was born, a subject we had never discussed with her. She talked about Mariana's and my first date, with details that only the two of us knew. Mariana arrived in the middle of this conversation and was as shocked as I was. We didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or believe what we were hearing. It was as if our daughter had come back different, with a wisdom that didn't belong to this world. The following days were an emotional roller coaster. The doctors ran a battery of tests on Sofia. To everyone's surprise, the intestinal obstruction had completely disappeared. It was as if she had gone through a total reset. Dr. Patel used terms like spontaneous remission and unprecedented case, but you could see that even he didn't really understand what had happened. Sofia kept talking about her experience. She described the moment she chose to come back, saying she had a mission to fulfill here on earth. For a child who had always been smart but normal, this kind of talk was both scary and fascinating. News of the miracle girl spread quickly through the hospital. Other patients and their families began asking to see Sofia. She talked to them with a compassion and maturity that left everyone speechless. There was even a time when she consoled a lady who had lost her husband, saying things about him that she couldn't possibly have known. We didn't know how to handle all of this. On one hand, we were relieved and happy to have our daughter back, and apparently cured. On the other, it was scary to see her so changed, saying things we didn't understand. One night while Sofia was sleeping, Mariana and I had a serious talk. We needed to decide what to do from there. Go back to Maple Grove and try to resume our normal life, or accept that our life had changed forever and embrace this new reality. It was around this time that the media began to take an interest in Sofia's story. Journalists were calling the hospital, wanting interviews. Some people from the local church came to visit, talking about a miracle. Even some scientists from a nearby university asked to study the case. We felt torn. We wanted to protect our daughter, give her a normal life, but at the same time we saw how her story was helping other people, bringing hope to those who were suffering. Sofia, with her new wisdom, was the one who ended up deciding. One afternoon she held our hands and said, "Mom, Dad, I came back for a reason. I need to share what I saw. I need to help people not to be afraid." That's when we realized that our life had changed forever. We were no longer just the Silva family from Maple Grove. We were now part of something bigger, something we didn't fully understand yet. Want to know how we dealt with all this attention? How we balanced the desire to have a normal life with Sofia's new mission? And how this affected not only our family, but the entire community around us. The months that followed were a real roller coaster. We decided to stay in Calgary for a while, at least until we were sure Sofia was fully recovered. The small apartment we had rented became our temporary home, and gradually we adapted to life in the big city. At first it was difficult to handle all the attention we were receiving. It seemed like everyone wanted a piece of Sofia. Journalists, researchers, people from the church. Our door was always full of people wanting to talk to the miracle girl. Mariana and I tried to filter as much as possible. After all, Sofia was still a child, and we wanted to protect her. But at the same time, we saw how her story was touching people. It was as if she had become a beacon of hope. We decided to be selective. We agreed to participate in some TV programs, but only those we felt were respectful and wouldn't exploit Sofia. We also allowed some researchers to study her case, hoping it might help science in some way. Sofia surprised us every day. She handled all of this with incredible maturity. In interviews, she spoke with a clarity that impressed even adults. She described her near-death experience with vivid details, but always in a way that brought comfort to people. There was one time we participated in a radio program. A listener called in crying, saying she had recently lost her son and couldn't deal with the pain. Sofia, with that sweet little voice of hers, said, "Your son is okay. He wants you to know that your love is eternal and that one day you'll meet again." The woman was silent for a moment and then thanked her, saying that for the first time in months she felt peace. Moments like these were frequent. We started receiving letters from all over Canada, from people telling how Sofia's story had changed their lives. Some talked about how they had found faith again, others about how they had lost their fear of death. But it wasn't all roses. There were people who didn't believe, who said it was all made up or hallucination. Some doctors tried to explain everything as an effect of lack of oxygen to the brain during the cardiac arrest. We understood the skepticism, but for us who saw the change in Sofia every day, there was no denying that something extraordinary had happened. In the midst of all this, we tried to maintain as normal a routine as possible for Sofia. She went back to school, now in a school in Calgary. At first it was difficult. The other children had heard about her, and some were afraid or treated her differently. But gradually, with the help of understanding teachers, Sofia started to fit in. I got a job at a local carpentry shop, and Mariana started giving piano lessons again, this time at home. We were rebuilding our lives, but in a different way. Now we had this mission along with Sofia. It was around this time that we had the idea of creating a foundation. We wanted to use Sofia's story to help other families who were going through difficult situations in hospitals. The Heaven's Light Foundation was born like this, small, in our apartment. Sofia was the heart of the foundation. She visited hospitals, talked to patients, consoled families who had lost loved ones. Seeing our 9-year-old daughter talking about God, eternal love, peace, it was breathtaking. But we were also worried. Wasn't it too much responsibility for a child? Were we not overwhelming her? We talked a lot about this, trying to find a balance. One night, after a particularly intense day, I went to put Sofia to bed. She was quiet, thoughtful. I asked if everything was okay, if it wasn't too much for her. You know what she said to me? "Dad, sometimes it's hard, but when I see people's smiles, when I see the hope in their eyes, and I know this is what I have to do." At that moment, I realized our daughter had grown in a way we could never have imagined. She wasn't just our little girl anymore. She had become a messenger of hope, an angel for many people. We kept learning every day, learning to deal with sudden fame, with responsibilities, with doubts. But more than anything, we were learning to see the world differently. Through Sofia's eyes, we began to see life as something precious, death as a passage, not an end. Want to know how this change in perspective affected our family? How we managed to balance this new mission with a normal life? And how Sofia's story ended up touching many more lives than we could have imagined? As months turned into years, Sofia's story continued to spread. Our small foundation grew, and we started receiving invitations from all over Canada and even from other countries to share her experience. It was around this time that something happened that we never expected. One day we received a call from a major national TV network. They wanted to do a special program about Sofia and our family. It wasn't just an interview, it was a complete documentary about our journey. At first we were hesitant. Sofia was 12 years old now, but she was still a child. We didn't want to expose her too much. But when we talked to her about it, Sofia said something that surprised us. "It's time to tell our story to the whole world. There are a lot of people who need hope." The preparations for the program were intense. The TV crew spent weeks with us, filming our daily lives, doing interviews. They even went with us on a visit to a hospital where Sofia talked with patients. The day of the live program arrived. It was a Sunday night, prime time. We were extremely nervous. I remember being backstage, Mariana adjusting Sofia's dress, her hands shaking. She was holding my hand tightly. When Sofia walked onto the stage under all those lights, my heart nearly stopped. She looked so small there. But when she started speaking, my God, she told everything. She talked about the illness, the surgery, the near-death experience. She described the tunnel of light, the people she met, the unconditional love she felt. She spoke about paradise with a conviction that left everyone speechless. The host, a man known for his skepticism, asked tough questions. But Sofia answered with a calmness and wisdom that didn't match her age. There was a moment when he asked, "How can you be sure it wasn't just a dream or hallucination?" Sofia smiled and said, "When you feel God's love, you just know. It's not something you explain, it's something you experience." The studio fell into complete silence. You could hear a pin drop. Even the host, that tough guy, had tears in his eyes. That's when something happened that no one expected. A woman in the audience stood up. She was crying and said she was going through difficult times. Sofia's words had brought peace to her heart for the first time. Suddenly more people started standing up. A man said he had lost his faith after his wife left him, but now he felt hope again. A young woman said she had always been afraid of death, but Sofia's words had taken away that fear. It was as if a wave of emotion had taken over the place. People were crying, hugging each other, sharing their stories of loss and hope. Sofia stood there in the middle of the stage, smiling with that serene smile of hers, as if she knew exactly what was happening. The program, which was supposed to last an hour, went on for 3. The network decided to continue broadcasting live because the calls kept coming in. People from all over the country were calling, wanting to share how Sofia's story had touched their lives. When it finally ended, and we left the studio, there was a crowd waiting outside. People wanted to thank Sofia, touch her, just be near her. It was scary and beautiful at the same time. That night back at the hotel, we could barely process what had happened. Sofia, always surprising, looked at us and said, "Did you see? That's why I came back. To bring hope." We knew our life had changed forever. Sofia's story wasn't just ours anymore. It had become a phenomenon that was touching millions of lives. In the days that followed, things got even bigger. The story went viral on the internet. Newspapers from all over the world wanted interviews. Religious leaders commented on the case. Scientists debated whether it was possible to prove or disprove her experience. In the midst of all this frenzy, we tried to keep our feet on the ground. Sofia was still our daughter, still a girl who needed a normal life. But how to balance this with the impact she was having on the world? We knew we were facing a crucial moment. The decisions we made now would shape not only the future of our family, but potentially the lives of millions of people who found hope in Sofia's story. Want to know how we navigated these uncharted waters? How we managed to protect our daughter and at the same time share her message with the world? And how this experience ended up transforming not just our family, but an entire generation? After that TV program, our life turned into a real whirlwind. The phone wouldn't stop ringing, the mailbox was overflowing with letters. Everyone wanted a piece of Sofia, her story, her wisdom. At first it was overwhelming. We didn't know how to handle so much attention. Mariana and I spent sleepless nights discussing what to do. Sofia, with that maturity that still surprised us, said, "Mom, Dad, I know you want to protect me, but I came back for a reason. I need to share what I saw. I need to help people not to be afraid." These words were a watershed moment for us. We realized we couldn't deny the world the message of hope that Sofia brought, but we also knew we needed to do this in a way that wouldn't overwhelm her. So we decided to be selective. We created a team to manage all the requests that were coming in. We only accepted invitations that we felt could have a real and positive impact. Talks at hospitals, interviews with serious journalists, appearances on programs that treated the subject with respect. Our foundation, Heaven's Light, grew more than we could have imagined. From a small operation in our apartment, it transformed into a national organization. We began to offer support to families who were going through situations similar to ours, to fund research on near-death experiences, to promote dialogue between science and spirituality. Sofia was the heart of all this. Even as she grew, she never lost that compassion, that wisdom that seemed to come from another world. She gave talks that left entire audiences in tears. She consoled people in mourning with words that seemed to come straight from heaven. But it wasn't all roses. Fame brought challenges we had never imagined. There were people who thought we were exploiting Sofia. Others said it was all an elaborate hoax. We even received some threats from people who thought her story was blasphemous. Dealing with all this wasn't easy. There were moments when we thought about throwing it all away and going back to our simple life in Maple Grove. But whenever we wavered, something happened that reminded us why we were doing all this. Like that time we received a letter from a mother whose son had lost his zest for life. She wrote saying that after hearing Sofia talk about the unconditional love she felt on the other side, her son had found a new reason to live. Or when a group of scientists approached us, saying that Sofia's detailed descriptions of her experience had opened up new lines of research on human consciousness. Over time, Sofia's story transcended Canada's borders. We started receiving invitations from other countries. It was a difficult decision, but we ended up accepting some of these invitations. Seeing how her message resonated with people from such different cultures, it was breathtaking. We traveled to the United States, to Europe, even to Japan. In each place, Sofia's story touched people in a unique way. It was as if she had become a kind of ambassador between this world and the beyond. But in the midst of all this madness, we always made sure to maintain space for our family life. We had normal days, where Sofia was just an ordinary teenager. She went to school, hung out with friends, teased her younger brother, whom we had a few years after her experience. Seeing her balance this extraordinary life with moments of normalcy was incredible. Sometimes I'd catch her watching Netflix or complaining about homework, and I had to pinch myself to believe this was the same girl who talked about the mysteries of the universe to audiences of thousands. As the years went by, we saw the impact of Sofia's story spreading like ripples in a lake. People who had heard her speak went on to touch other lives. The message of love, hope, and connection beyond death spread in a way we could never have imagined. Science was affected too. Sofia's detailed descriptions of her near-death experience inspired new research. Doctors and scientists from around the world began to look at consciousness and death differently. It was no longer taboo to talk about life after death in academic circles. And you know what's most incredible? Seeing how all this affected Sofia herself. She grew up being this bridge between worlds, this messenger of hope. But she never lost her humanity, her ability to marvel at the simple things in life. When Sofia turned 18, we threw a small party just for family and close friends. In the middle of the celebration, she pulled me aside and said, "Dad, thank you. Thank you for believing in me, for supporting me, for letting me be who I am." Today, 10 years after that TV program that changed everything, our life is a fascinating mix of extraordinary and ordinary. Sofia is 22 now, an incredible young woman. She decided to study neuroscience and philosophy at university, wanting to better understand the connection between mind, consciousness, and what exists beyond this life. Our foundation, Heaven's Light, has grown beyond our wildest dreams. We help thousands of people every year, offering emotional and spiritual support to those dealing with emotional problems or going through near-death experiences. We also fund scientific research on consciousness and transcendental experiences. Sofia continues to be the heart of all this. Even focused on her studies, she still gives lectures, participates in conferences, writes books. Her wisdom has only grown with time. It's amazing to see how she can connect complex scientific concepts with the spiritual truths she experienced. Mariana and I look back and can hardly believe everything that's happened. Those agonizing days in the hospital now seem like a lifetime ago. We've grown so much on this journey. We've learned about faith, unconditional love, and how precious and mysterious life is. Sofia's experience didn't just save her life, it transformed our family and touched millions of others. We've learned that there's much more to this existence than we can see or understand. That love, compassion, and faith can truly move mountains. The impact of her story continues to spread. We receive letters from all over the world, from people telling us how Sofia's message changed their lives, how it brought peace in difficult times, how it reconnected families, how it inspired people to live with more purpose. It's been beautiful to see how Sofia's work has inspired a new generation. Young people from all over the world, touched by her story, are dedicating themselves to exploring the mysteries of life and death, whether through science, philosophy, or spirituality. Science still can't fully explain what happened to Sofia. And you know what? That's okay. We've learned that some things don't need to be fully explained to be true and meaningful. Our journey continues. We don't know what the future holds, but we know that whatever happens, we'll face it together, with love, with faith, and with the certainty that there's something greater guiding us. Today, when someone asks me if I believe in miracles, I smile and say, I don't just believe in them, I live one every day. Because each day with Sofia, each life we touch through our story, is a reminder of the miracle we experienced. And you who've listened to our story up to this point, what do you think? Have you ever experienced something you can't explain? Have you ever felt there's more to this life than we can see? Think about it. Sometimes the greatest miracles happen when we least expect them. We just need to have an open heart to receive them. Our story is a reminder that life is a beautiful mystery, and that each of us has the power to make a difference, to bring light into others' lives. Whatever your journey may be, remember, love is real, hope is powerful, and miracles happen every day if we have eyes to see them.